I find games like Otogi, Myths of Demons a bit hard to review. From a presentation point of view, it stands out in all the right ways, but from a more gameplay perspective, it's a mixed bag. The term style of a substance really applies here. FromSoftware is a developer I really respect. They play their hand at everything, often building cult classics instead of AAA juggernauts. While now they may focus on the Soul series, in years past, more humbler stories emerged in Armored Core, Kingsfield, and Otogi. Besides the company's name, each franchise's differences are stark and very apparent. Within a library of innumerable mecha action titles, here's a third-person hack-and-slash game entrenched within the thick atmosphere of mythical Japan where you play as Raiko, a semi-dead executioner with an obvious unsavory past, who's essentially resurrected by an otherworldly princess when a horde of demons flood into Japan. Well, that was a mouthful. Anyway, there's only Raiko's skills of warrior that can halt and reverse the demonic invasion. Otogi is a very Japanese experience, focusing heavily on a stylistic and atmospheric tone reflecting the folklore and mysticism of Japan. Characterization is kept to a minimal. Raiko doesn't speak, and what must be done is led out by the princess at the start of each level. A lot of the voice work carries an emotional weight that can catch you off guard, though you mostly just go, ugh, at the skill of the actors. From the beginning, Otogi wants you to know how unwelcoming its world is. There's no room here for quips, humour, or heavy bass guitar, as everything's been taken up by a very somber tone and unsettling atmosphere. The environments have a very spectral appearance with washed out colours and bizarre geometry that gradually becomes more hellish and abstract further into the game. It's all decidedly rooted in Japanese culture and mythos. Fighting swarms of classical demonic foes amidst traditional houses, shrines, religious and unique cultural iconography can't be replicated anywhere else. Before the artistic beauty, you're really not meant to be enjoying yourself, because Raiko sure as fuck isn't, nor is anyone else. The only other characters you encounter in this desolate world are vengeful spirits who reprimand Raiko for his past misdeeds before and after fighting him, all kept purposely vague. The music is certainly something. It's an ensemble of classical oriental drums, strings, and chords that create an extremely chilling and unnerving soundtrack that feels totally unique from anything else I've ever listened to. It fits in well with the gameplay without compromising the mood the narrative establishes. It's just downright fucking spooky, honestly. Now, I haven't been talking about Otogi's gameplay, as it's a beast to unpack. The game can be unfairly challenging for the wrong reasons while still being enjoyable. Otogi's a pretty long game with close to 30 stages on offer. The general goal in each of them is to hack and break everything in your way before reaching the end or clearing the area. Occasionally you may focus on dealing with one of the game's challenging boss fights, but aside from that, it's a linear journey to the conclusion. The levels contain a large amount of destructibility, with at least a few buildings you can collapse and geometry that can be completely destroyed. It's good stuff, as it makes the battles far more chaotic and intense, with debris flying across the screen. What's more, you can make craters when slamming an enemy into the ground, which will remain consistent for the rest of the stage. Awesome. A big factor of the gameplay and the level design is how while your health can partially rejuvenate, your actual body is sustained through magic, which is constantly being drained, after which moving becomes limited and your health starts to decrease, making the levels much harder to get through. While you can replenish your health and magic through status orbs scattered throughout the environment, you're forced into an aggressive and offensive playstyle to survive. Being reserved and patient just isn't the way forward. Enemies aren't going to wait around while you retreat to heal, instead they prefer getting in close before delivering some serious pain. Couple that with your ever-depleting pool of magic, which is refilled by killing enemies and their high numbers, makes it clear how you should play. Otogi is a very freeform fighting system by utilising the large level sizes via the Xbox's hardware. As long as you've still got some magic, you can continually perform a dash move ad infinitum, allowing you to cross vast pits and reach elevated positions at ease and at any time. This all impacts how you fight enemies, as smaller ones can be easily dodged or dispatched via a few slashes before moving on to the next, bigger foes who can have you air juggling them, Tekken style. Once out of harm's way, you can beat the ever-loving shit out of them. It's very satisfying getting a large combo by backflipping an enemy to death. Your actual attacks themselves are pretty limited. You've got a light, fast attack, useful combos, and a more impressive, heavy attack that sends enemies flying across the map, destroying everything in the way. Smacking enemies into each other and breakable objects is crazy fun, and you rely on this method simply because of how overwhelmingly destructive it is. You've also got area of effect magic attacks that work well against large groups of enemies, at the cost of your magic supply, dissuading overuse. There's a creative roster of enemy types you can view before each level. It's hard to describe their appearance, besides it can be creepy and fun to fight given their size and Japanese aesthetic. The frequent boss fights are usually fun. Aside from the narrative factor, their size, attacks, and design feel highly unique, as well as the dedicated stages allowing some really entertaining duels. The game's camera is fairly good for the most part. It tracks where you go consistently enough, though I have died to off-screen bullshit and could get disoriented from the amount of flashy garbage on screen. Overall, it's neither particularly complex nor deep, but definitely stylish and fun. Staying on the move and staying in the air is a good rule of thumb in regards to the combat. Between levels you can buy and equip different weapons, magic attacks, and charms that give you stat buffs. Items can be purchased via gold collected by fighting enemies. Each of the large array of weapons have different pros and cons, some boosting your defense while others improving your magic. They degrade over time, so repairing them at the store can bite a hole in your budget. There's different animations and modified attacks to each one, slightly changing the pace of combat, making experimentation worthwhile. However, Otogi is incredibly frustrating in how unbalanced and vague it can be. While there is a leveling system and experience system in play, you'd think that a fast-paced action game wouldn't make replaying levels to grind gold and EXP so necessary for advancement, but it is. So at the menu you can replay stages with the pre-existing damages inflicted and items collected. This means you don't have to 100% a level in a single run, but through successive attempts. I like this. Either way though, you need to continually level up to improve your stats. Trying to play it linearly, you'll smack into a brick wall made up of far tougher, more aggressive enemy types that will flat out crush you. You also need the gold to buy good weapons and repair them too. So running around killing everything in a map your first time through just isn't good enough. There are also some very annoying aspects to the combat besides it being somewhat shallow. You can die really quickly, as some of the more powerful enemies and bosses can easily drop you with a few hits, especially if you're unable to find any mercy orbs, permanent health upgrades hidden throughout the game which you can easily miss, as their existence isn't apparent nor are they listed as being in a level. Like me, you're going to play through most of the game before coming across even one, besides perhaps the first few levels. Dying only sends you back to the beginning of the stage, which usually isn't so bad, as the levels aren't long. However, having so little health for so long results in dying again and again, especially late game, which isn't fun at fucking all. Now I mentioned the game had almost 30 levels, which should be rightly impressive. However, many of them are repeated with a mild aesthetic change to boost the level count, which feels incredibly lazy and boring. Probably the most glaring flaw is how inconsistent the difficulty is. There are some weapons and spells that are way better than their contemporaries. The spell Dragon, while technically a lower level spell, is absurdly effective, sending forth streams of magic that home in and destroy demons. Once I realized this worse spell was so overpowered, I used it for the rest of the game without a worry, making some later stages far easier. Speaking of which, some are pretty short, simple affairs, while others are far more tedious and annoying than they have any right to be. Take this stage where you have to protect a fox spirit thing as it slowly drifts across the map. If it dies, it's all the way back. Its tolerance to damage is about as high as mine is for bullshit escort missions, i.e. not fucking much. After a dozen or so attempts, I succeeded after downgrading to the dragon spell, the suddenly stage was a complete walk in the fucking park. It's a real kick to the teeth for the game, as it may not be your lack of skill that's fucking you over, but not spamming some special attack. But does this override the finer, interesting mechanics of the game, especially its wonderful presentation? Not in my opinion, but it does hold it back from being a truly great action title for the Xbox. I'm a huge sucker with FromSoftware titles, and even if I didn't like it, I'd still probably recommend it because you're getting something wholly different from anything else out there. And that's what my channel's dedicated to, looking at the lesser known bizarro video games. Or whatever the fuck that means.
One sometimes regrets the decisions he makes in life. But then, he only has himself to blame for his fate. This pain I feel is proof of my free will.